Hey guys, welcome to Hope It Helps. And my guest on the show today is Mr. Guillaume Larronde. Did I say that correctly?
Guillaume,
Guillaume Larronde. Welcome to the show.
thank you.
Thank you for your
Very
time.
glad.
I really appreciate it. So, Guillaume, me and you met, or we got in touch through LinkedIn about 2 months ago, and I thought what you do and your experience is super interesting. That now you have a company that's involved in digital selling and social selling and so on, but you have a background working at LinkedIn for many years. So I'm like, oh, okay, that must be really, really interesting. So I thought it'd be amazing to talk to you, and I think a lot of people could take something away from your experience. But before we get into all that kind of stuff, why don't you give everyone just a little bit of background about yourself, and we'll take it from there.
Sure. So thanks for the opportunity. Really glad to be here. It's the first time for me, but I'll try to do my best answering the best way the questions you're going to ask. So my name is Guillaume Larronde. I'm French. I've been in Dubai for 8 years now. Like you mentioned, I used to work at LinkedIn. I actually have, let's say, an international experience where actually I lived 7 years in London. I've been in Dubai for 8 years now, and I've been in sales pretty much all my life. Started from telesales jobs to managing a team in LinkedIn in Dubai, and now I set up my own business called Extra Mile, and to focus on digital selling in the region.
In the region. Okay, so you've been working, I know, so you 7 years in London, 8 years in Dubai, and it sounds like you've been in sales for the majority of your life. So 15 years of sales experience, that's a long time to be in sales. So I wanted to ask you, what was your motivation for initially getting into sales? Were you always passionate about sales, or how did you start getting into sales?
I studied in universities. I've always been attracted to math.
Math, okay.
Science. I've always liked this field, and only when I was around, a teenager, I got exposed to economy, business, and I really kind of opened my eyes, with regards to entrepreneurship, being in control of your destiny, setting up your own business.
Yeah.
And so I changed gears at university and went to study economies. Okay. And I did a master in management strategic and business setup, and that led me, after finishing my master, to going to the UK to learn English, to be fluent in English. And I wanted to have an exposure internationally as well, and also. What got me into sales is, first of all, in the UK, with my level of English, actually, although I was always been academically very, very strong in English, but in France, it's not standard. So when I actually ended up living in the UK, when I moved to UK, I was really rusted. I couldn't understand my ear. I needed to develop my ear. So in a nutshell, I ended up working in sales because that was the easiest path in terms of opportunity for me as a French-speaking person to get a job in the UK, an office job, to start my career. And also I felt sales was really a quality and a skill that I needed to develop, because it's really essential when it comes to business and business development and sales. If you want to set up your own business at some point, to have the understanding about sales. Yeah. So that's kind of the reason why I ended up being there, and I ended up working in a UK company in London as a telesales to look after the French market. Okay. And even at the time, I was doing okay. So I was asking for more responsibility, and I ended up actually selling into the Middle East. Okay. So that was my first kind of experience within the Middle East. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, that's very interesting. How long, you said it took you a while for your English to become very comfortable with it. How long would you say it took you to become fully comfortable and fluent in your English?
So I will say maybe 6 months.
6 months only? That's a very short time.
Yeah, because obviously for example, I remember I challenged myself when I actually landed in the UK, in London. you start looking for a flat, and usually you share flats with others.
Sure.
And I ended up sharing a flat with other French people. It was easy. And as soon as I got a job, within a month, I looked for moving out. I looked for sharing a flat with British and English-speaking people.
Ah, okay.
So I actually left the French flat sharing experience, and then I kind of like challenged myself and actually moved out. So then it was very challenging as well, because it helped a lot, you know.
Sure. Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay, very interesting. I think that's very commendable to throw yourself into just a British household and try to learn the language. But if you picked it up in 6 months, that's amazing. Coming back to what you said, so you always liked math and science, but growing up, you started becoming interested in economics and like business. But I remember from one of the answers you gave to some of the questions was that when you were 15, you had a conversation with a man who really opened your eyes to like entrepreneurship and business, and that's why you always knew from that age that you wanted to at some point own your own company. So tell us about the story. Who was this person, and what was it that like really like made it click for you that's what you wanted to do?
It was not a click. It was mainly the stories he was telling us about. With regards to his he was a financial director. He was really high position in a logistic company, and he was really interested in finance and business, and so it gave us a lot of exposure to the way of doing business at executive level. So that was really opened my eyes when it comes to potential entrepreneurship. We're talking about startups as well. That was just before the internet boom. So obviously there were some external factors to me opening my eyes, and me seeing the opportunity and being interested in other things than math and science. But yeah, that's kind of an overall context that pushed me to be more interested in that. But yeah.
And did you in your mind have a time frame as to when you would finally launch your own business, or was that did that come with after all the years of experience that you've had?
No, actually, the way it worked is that I was really. I didn't set up I had a goal, but I thought I would learn along the way. As soon as the opportunity will come, at least I will have the sales experience. I will have the business, let's say, a general understanding about how to run a business. Yeah. And that's the reason why I chose the masters I chose. And I felt, trying to get exposure along the way to different functions and different experiences and so on, and then just being open to the opportunity and jumping on the right one. And so I think the one that the thing is that you miss many opportunities. Everybody's got great ideas, millions of ideas. 100%. And the main difference is actually people acting on that.
Exactly.
Taking, making the jump, taking the risk, going for it and acting. And so I think I missed a couple opportunities, some ideas that I had when I was in university, and then, 5 years later, it just exists,
Exactly, wow.
Yeah. But the main thing is that, working at LinkedIn, I saw many opportunities when it came to education, consulting, training companies, going beyond what, the usage of LinkedIn is, and how companies really can leverage LinkedIn, or how leaders can leverage LinkedIn in a more strategic way. Mm-hmm. And it's always been in my mind, back in France. And so I moved on, with LinkedIn. I came in the Middle East, and then for me, I had a couple of opportunities after LinkedIn, and I felt like, okay, now is the time. I'm ready. I think there is still potential in the region to help companies with regard to digital selling or social business or social strategy in general.
Yeah.
But companies B2B, really helping those B2B companies with regards to business related. Let's say actionable methodologies, whether it's about recruitment or sales or B2B marketing or just for leaders in terms of thought leadership. Exactly. So that's the idea. And I thought, okay, I'm gonna go for it. I did a bit of research. I found that there was still a gap in the market. There is still potential. Obviously, now we are talking. There is COVID. The transformation was happening, but obviously COVID accelerated. A lot of companies are asking themselves, like, okay, we should go fully digital when it comes to sales, or we should be more, present on social, online, helping the sales team really, build relationship with customers and so on. So, for business-related reasons, COVID actually reaccelerated that movement.
Yeah, exactly.
And so it's kind of reinforcing the fact that I actually made the right decision. I think, maybe you always wanted to be earlier than what you start. When you started, I think I wish I was a bit earlier because then I would have been like benefiting from this opportunity full-fledged. But in the end, it's happening, and I'm happy that I made that jump.
That jump, yeah, exactly. And you know how a lot of especially nowadays, entrepreneurship is so glorified. Everyone wants to start their own business. Everyone wants to do that. But like you said correctly, you decided to start your business after so many years working in the business world, learning how to run a business and different business functions and so on. But I feel there's two schools of thought. There are some people that believe, let's say you're just fresh graduate from university. There's two arguments. Some people be like, oh, you want to be an entrepreneur? Go be an entrepreneur and figure all that out as you go along. And then there's others that are like, no, work in the corporate world for a few years and then start your own business so you can learn just how business works. Which side would you fall on? If you could go back, would you still do the route that you took, or would you maybe go straight for entrepreneurship instead?
It's a good question. I think a little bit of both. I mean, it depends on the industry, it depends on your skill that you have. For example, fresh graduates who know how to code and are in computer science, they can build products from scratch. So the risk is not that, big.
Yeah.
If you are, launching a business in other industries where cost for, launching your business is higher, competition is higher, building products is, for the cost of building products is much higher, then it's gonna be completely different. So I will assume, I think, also if you start, we've seen it, a lot of people have great ideas, they build great products, but they fail at managing.
Yeah.
They fail at building a great culture.
Yeah.
They fail at managing other people. They fail when it comes to building a great strategy. They fail at business, business development, sales, and building a relationship with partners and so on. So, at the end of the day, even if the people are starting from scratch and from school, they will make some mistakes. And then people that are maybe risk adverse and learning more and building their experiences and then deciding to launch later, they might have less, let's say, they will have more experience, but they will also make some mistakes with regards to product and so on. So I think, it's hard to tell you it really depends on the industries, and people will be so super smart. They will build products and they will nail the culture and managing people and so on. And some others, they will get the experience and they will still fail. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think, like you said, I think it's very subjective to industry, and I think it's also very subjective to a person's character, because I think entrepreneurship has been pushed a lot, especially over the last 5 to 10 years. But would you agree that not everyone has the skill set to be an entrepreneur? And even if they're not, that's perfectly fine. Lots of people have been successful in the corporate world, having careers for 20 plus years, and they've had a great life. So what would you say?
Yeah.
What would you think?
So I think everybody can do it.
Okay.
Everybody's got skills. Everybody's got strength. Some have more strength than others. Some have, but the thing is that, starting a business, maybe you can start a business by yourself. Building a business and having a successful business long term, you cannot do it by yourself alone.
Yeah.
So you need to, I think, to build a successful business, you need to actually build successful teams, founding teams,
yeah.
and a leadership team, having great employees. And so you cannot really do it by yourself. So therefore, you need to find people that can complement your strength with, people that have other strengths. And so I think everybody can do it as long as they are self-aware and they recognize their strengths and their weaknesses, and they are bringing other people that actually can complement their strengths.
Yeah.
So, to be honest, anyone, as long as they have the right idea and they are committed to, making that jump, everyone can make it.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point that I didn't consider before, that anyone can, as long as you put the right team and get the right people in place to be successful in whatever industry that you're looking to be in. I don't think that's something I'd considered before, so that's very interesting. Yeah. Now, you've been in sales for over 15 years. So what is the thing that you enjoy most about selling? Because I know you started off as a sales rep, but then you became a sales manager. So I'm curious, did you get more satisfaction when you were a sales rep and you hit your target, or when you were a sales manager and you manage your team to successfully hit their target?
It's different, to be honest. I think it's a different kind of excitement and kind of joy. When you close a deal and it's well done, and you know that you added value to the customer and it's been done well, and the customer is happy and you're happy. The tougher the job was, whether it was a long process or you got competition involved and it was tough, and finally it went through, there is a sense of relief and achievement that is really amazing. Like, it's really great. Again, when you are a manager and it's your team, I've got to be honest, it's a different process. So, for example, you will have such a great excitement as well and achievement when someone that struggled, or someone that you build, that you build their skills over time, and then they land, or they close a big deal, or they land a big deal. That's amazing, and you are super happy for them as well. And when it's a team effort where, for example, you achieve a team number or team targets at the end of the year, this is again amazing. So, for example, my first year as a manager at LinkedIn, we had, because it was the first year for me as a manager, and also we built a new team. So we had pretty much half of the team were starting at LinkedIn as well. So there was a ramp-up period. There was a lot of training. They had to understand the business and clients, and so I remember we started the last quarter of the year with a negative gap. We needed to bridge the gap to actually at least be on target with regards to the year-to-date target, and then we needed to close the quarter as well. So we started the last quarter with a backlog. Yeah. And so we put things in place. The team done a phenomenal job. I tried to do everything I could give them in terms of motivating them and being there for them and so on. And we ended up overachieving. So that sense of achievement was obviously shared. I was so happy that they achieved individually and collectively. We actually made it as well. And I've got to say, it's a different excitement, but they are both amazing. Yeah.
And I think you made a good point that there are different types of joy and different types of excitement, because one is very individualistic because it's yourself, you're putting in the work, you're closing that deal. And then when you have a team, it's empowering them and giving them the right tools and strategies and processes so you collectively can hit that goal. So I can see how it's two different things. Could you please walk us through the whole, I know you were at LinkedIn for 6 years, and I know you were also the first employee for LinkedIn in France, so that must have been pretty exciting to see to go from the first employee to I don't know how many employees LinkedIn grew over in that time that you were there. So walk us through that whole LinkedIn experience. How was that for you?
Okay, so I joined LinkedIn in end of 2009. At the time, I was in London. The only office outside the US was in London.
Okay.
And at the time, there were around 25 employees in London. So And I think globally, LinkedIn was around 500 employees.
Okay.
So basically,
Mid-size.
everybody in US and 25 outside the US in London. So I joined the team in London to look after the French market. At the time, they were covering everything outside the US, was managed through London, I believe. And they hired me to look after the French market, to start, building relationship with customers and going to France so it was very interesting because it was just after the crisis.
Yeah.
Economies were recovering. UK was getting better, but France, there is a little bit always inertia with France in terms of picking back up.
Okay.
Picking things back up. So it took a bit longer for France to reopen, to unfreeze recruitment. Mm-hmm. And I was looking after the talent solutions business, so corporate solutions at LinkedIn, helping companies with LinkedIn when it comes to helping those companies recruit and use LinkedIn for recruitment and branding themselves as employer of choice. Okay. So I was going, in France and meeting companies and because I was the only and the first representative at the time, there was a direct competitor in France.
Oh, really?
Of LinkedIn called Viadeo. Okay. And there were 200 employees. They were the French startup, so they were really popular. They were, considering LinkedIn as the invader, the big American company, bulldozer, crushing everything, and not really localizing LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. So I was facing this, and obviously there was the crisis, and then I really spent a lot of time educating, meeting people. There were amazing people helping me and recognizing the value of LinkedIn. So there were a couple of great influencers and people that really helped me, connecting me, introducing me, and I ended up doing an event at the Crillon for the first LinkedIn event in France, which is a palace in Paris. We got half of the, we had the HR executives from half of the CAC 40, which is the, like the FTSE in London. Okay. So half of those massive publicly best companies in France were represented at the first LinkedIn event in Paris. I spoke to La Sorbonne. So for me, I was in my early 30s, and I was really getting those opportunities to speak and to represent LinkedIn, and so that was amazing. Going to those companies as well, like L'Oréal and LVMH, and it was amazing to go to those HQs, and so that was incredible. Also being part of the first launch of LinkedIn in France and opening the office, being part of the recruitment, helping those people being ramped up and being trained, and that was incredible. That was amazing. And then after, I got the opportunity to come to the Middle East and kind of reboot a little bit the experience when it comes to starting the three of us in GLT and opening, moving into an office in Internet City and recruitment and training. And so, in Dubai, we started the three of us. Within 2 or 3 years, we were 60.
Wow. Okay.
And so that the beauty of LinkedIn was they were really betting big on hyper growth, growing as fast as possible, opening offices as fast as possible, building relationship with customers and acquiring new customers as fast as possible. And being part of this journey was amazing. And it was a great experience. Yeah,
that sounds like such a great story, because it sounds like because you were, I guess, one of the first people for LinkedIn, or the first for LinkedIn in France, and you had to go and start building those relationships in a market where there was a competitor that was already, quite popular. Would you say because of those experiences and having the opportunity to speak at like La Sorbonne and stuff like that really accelerated your career growth, because you were having to do so much all together?
Yes, of course. I mean, first of all, for example, within 5 to 6 years at LinkedIn, every year was a different role.
Okay.
So LinkedIn was structuring and maturing as well as an organization, and as well as obviously going in hyper growth mode. A lot of things were changing. So that was it. And then every year I was actually, because I was moving to different teams, or the teams were growing, or opening offices. So, every time it was a different experience. So within France, obviously everything, a lot of things have changed every year, and it was amazing for me getting all of that exposure. And obviously the same in Dubai. When I came to Dubai, I remember I was flying so many times on Emirates that I became a gold member within a year. So, I was, traveling all over the region, and, all of this experience was fantastic for me. And so I also being recognized as, transformation is a big value at LinkedIn as part of the culture. And I was recognized as being a person, representing or impersonating that value, transformation. So that was, it shows that, yes, obviously a lot of things have changed for me, and personally, as well.
Yeah, and I think because you had so many different roles in such a short amount of time, you're probably exposed to so many different areas of the business, and probably had a much better idea of, I guess, what the future of things like LinkedIn and how important it would be like in today's like society. And one thing that you said that was interesting is that you were working with companies from a talent recruitment perspective. And now, as you know, LinkedIn is probably one of the number one places where people find jobs and so on. And now, especially with COVID, I think that, like you said earlier, it just accelerated everything, and the need for like LinkedIn and all these kind of companies. So let's say because this might be useful to someone now looking for a job, and from someone who is expert and was like building those kind of profiles, what are the things that an employee would be looking for like on LinkedIn? What does my profile need to look like to make a potential company be interested in me? How do I start to stand out from like the rest?
So as an employee
as an employee trying to get a job.
Okay. So the first thing that I recommend everybody is like really being laser focused. A lot of people, when they are looking for jobs, they are not desperate, but they really want to keep their options open.
Yes.
And so by doing that, you tend to try to target as many companies, being open for any opportunities. And by not really being specializing and focusing on the right companies or a very selected amount of companies, or a specific industry, then you tend to not being as attractive as you could to very few. Because if you are aiming for too many, your profile is not attractive to any in a way.
Interesting.
So, you need to be found, first of all.
Yeah.
And recruiters in companies, especially within, this context of coronavirus, with actually a lot of, people being laid off or looking for jobs, the demand is really high, and the supply in terms of job is low. So employers have like a lot of
thousands.
choice.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, they will do their search within their database and look at the profile of candidates who apply to their jobs. Usually they have so many, candidates interested in it, and when they post jobs, they don't even look at the candidates that applied in the past. They would actually just post the job, and they will look at the candidates who just applied to that job.
Really?
Usually, right?
Okay. So the most recent candidates.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Because for sure that they are actually right now looking, and they are in the market now.
Yeah.
You might not want to look at other people that you might not know for sure if they are still interested, or actually maybe they got a job. So the thing is that, again, being laser focused is going to help you optimize your profile, optimize your activities on LinkedIn, and optimize your chances of getting the attention from the right type of companies, the right type of people in those companies.
Yeah.
And so being prepared as well is really key, because again, if you are leaving your options open to, hoping for the best and being kind of as open as possible to many companies, you're not going to be able to research very specifically an industry or a selected list of companies. So, so obviously, again, being laser focused, spending time researching, spending time building relationship with the right people in the dream companies that you love to go to, and being persistent and consistent will actually help you build those relationships. So when there are opportunities, you already built that relationship, you already built that knowledge about the industry and the company itself. So then you will be on their radar, and you will be probably, front and center when it comes to actually, if obviously you have the right skills and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
One thing that I learned at LinkedIn and that kind of told me is the maturity of the leaders who joined LinkedIn as well. When I was, a young professional, I could hear some conversations, and I heard once one of the leader where the way he got at LinkedIn was he selected, he built a selection of 10 companies that based on criteria that he wanted to go into based on the potential of the companies, the culture, the size, etc. And then he built relationship with those companies.
Yeah.
So and that was it. And then he landed at LinkedIn. And so it just shows the different mindsets of people who actually really care about their career, what company they choose to work for, because it makes sense for their career development and with regards to their career. And it changed it changed your career from, randomly landing a job to a company that you applied out of many and they found you randomly and so on, and being laser focused on maybe 10 companies that you choose to go after because that's your choice. You decide who you want to work for based on your career aspiration and the potential of those companies, and you work on those companies by doing your research, building the relationships and so on. So totally different approach. And today LinkedIn is a fantastic tool for actually doing the research, finding the right people, building those relationships ahead of time, taking coffees with people who are in the companies in different decision-making positions, HR, recruitment, or business lines that you work at.
You want to be interested in as well.
And also you can actually find ex-employees of that company to actually even have conversations with understanding the culture.
Yeah.
Because when a company is recruiting, they will tell you, they will sell you the company as well.
Yeah.
But actually hearing what the company is about from ex-employees will remove that filter.
Yeah.
And you will get a lot more authentic feedback from ex-employees who, they don't have any problem anymore telling the reality. So there is so much information you can get out of LinkedIn, so many people you can get access to, and if you really care about your career, you need to be proactive about it.
Proactive. I think that's amazing advice, and it's so almost counterintuitive to the way even I've applied to jobs in the past, and I think the way many people do that, we think you need to cast the widest net possible, and hopefully, like you were saying, one of them will fall, instead of flipping it and just being more concise and focused and putting in the work and research to really target the kind of company you want to work for. I think that's really, really interesting. It almost flips it completely on its head. But that moves us perfectly on to our next question, and since you're the LinkedIn expert, so now that let's say I'm looking for I've picked my 10 companies, I want to do my research on them. How do I start going about building my network? How do I start building a strong network for, to start getting me maybe into those companies or getting me into whatever kind of career or opportunities I'm looking for? Because I also think that sometimes people might be a bit hesitant or like maybe shy to like reach out to someone they don't know on LinkedIn and start building that kind of relationship. So what advice would you have about, building a network and those kind of relationships?
Okay, so again, start with yourself and your goals and your objectives. Okay. Start with the industry you want to work for long term. Start with the companies that will help you get there. And in terms of networking, it's super easy to find people on LinkedIn, right? So you have advanced search. I'm not going to go into the details, but a lot of people just search by name. Obviously, if you don't know, the name of the people in HR or in the business line that you work in at Google or at the companies that you want to get a job at, Al Futtaim, Al Shaya, Emirates, and so on, you need to know how to search.
Okay.
If you don't know the people's names. Yeah. So you need to find them. So you need to search by keywords, with functions, with company names, based on job titles, using Boolean like head or director or manager and sales or HR or whatever. So then you actually use those Boolean terms to be able to do more effective searches on LinkedIn to find people based not on their name but on their job title.
Okay.
Then once you find those people, usually there are two ways of going about it. If you don't prior research, you try to connect with people within the right companies already. Not necessarily in the top level positions or critical, functions, but you just build your network with other employees in the company. And those are easy to find because you might have already a network, you might have already connections, and you can actually find connections in common that that can introduce you to other people in that company.
Yeah.
Whoever they are.
Sure.
And then once you have a couple of connections in the companies that you focus on and you target, then when you find those decision makers based on the advanced search, based on functions or job titles, you might have more chances of actually having people in common with those decision makers. So then it's easier to get an introduction or to refer those people that you know already. It will give you more credibility and it will actually give you a kick when it comes to like a boost when it comes to reaching out.
Yeah.
So that's an easy one that most people don't realize, that you're just connecting with people and over time using touch points, using content, using insights, commenting on their content, liking. It doesn't need to be in person and calls. It can be just complementing. You don't like us. We started just exchanging on LinkedIn, and then after we took a call, right? So it's the same with people. You might have touch points, and then you have this familiarity, and then you actually have this kind of that makes sense. Why not?
Sure.
I mean, I've seen his content. He liked my content. I liked his content. He's credible. We know people in common. Why not having a call? So networking is really investing time on building those relationships, finding the right people, and doesn't need to be a direct, outreach, a direct connection request, but it can be more subtle than that, through touch points, through understanding that person, looking at the content, liking or having those touch points and those interactions through LinkedIn or Twitter or whatever it can be as well. And the whole point is, over time, then you will have the confidence to reach out to the right people because you will already have maybe 5-10 other employees in the same company, and they might know two in common with you. So it's going to be easier when it comes to networking. And it's the same for sales. It's the same for finding a job. It's the same for looking for talent. It's the same for example, for students, finding mentors or finding internships. So you have the same kind of methodology applies for a lot
across the board.
Yes.
Yeah. And it sounds like your network or the type of people you have in your network kind of gives you on LinkedIn, whether it's in the same company or not, it kind of gives you some form of credibility as to who this person is, because it kind of is like, why is this person connected with this person? Let me dig a little deeper.
Absolutely.
It might be interesting to find out why, there's this connection or what's the reason behind it. So it does give you that, like, I guess, credibility badge, so people are more interested to speak to you. Yeah. And so after leaving LinkedIn, I know you decided that you wanted to launch now Extra Mile, and it's been going for, I think, a year or 2 years now? A year or 2 years. So what was the motivation behind Extra Mile? Tell us all about it. How does it all work?
Okay, so the short story is that I always wanted to set up my own business. Actually, back in London, like I mentioned to you, I had an episode between two jobs. I set up my own business. Without doing that, I would not have that job at LinkedIn, because what they liked was the entrepreneurship and mindset, doing things by yourself and starting things. So although it was not the industry I liked and it was not really my passion, I really loved the research and building something from scratch. And actually, although it was not my passion, actually, I think it's one of the reasons why LinkedIn considered me and I got the job. So no regrets. I think the reason why I started Extra Mile is, like I said, I always wanted to be my own boss. I wanted to set up something and start my own company. And I was waiting for the right opportunity. Working at LinkedIn allowed me to build two things. Sales competency. Again, I'm not the greatest salesman on earth. Absolutely not. I think I'm quite average. I think I'm actually what makes me good. And I think if I was bad, I would not have worked in sales for around 15 years. Or it is the fact that I really cared about customers. I was looking at sales as a way of solving problems. I was always trying to be kind of a consultative and being consultant, understanding customers, trying to really help them. And something we didn't talk about was I always felt weird about sales. I talked about sales and what got me into sales and what I liked in sales when it comes to closing deal and so on.
Yeah.
But something that kind of literally changed my mindset when it comes to sales is when I was in London, I worked for a business intelligence company, and I really felt interrupting customers. Obviously LinkedIn was English-speaking platform at the time. It was not yet even translated in other languages than English. And so I was looking for customers, prospects, but I felt like every time I was reaching out, I was interrupting. It was not really a good feeling for them and for me. And what changed my mindset was the book called Go Giver.
Yeah, you mentioned this to me actually. Yeah.
And so that changed my mindset. I really became focused on customers, understanding them more, doing more research, and that changed my. It made me more confident, and so, in terms of sales, that's what made me so. So why I created Extra Mile was I felt like I had that experience in sales, and I had the expertise of LinkedIn, working there and using LinkedIn day in and day out for my job in sales, reaching out to customers, building relationships on LinkedIn. And I felt like there was an opportunity for me to educate even further LinkedIn customers or companies or sales organizations, with B2B sales teams, because LinkedIn is an essential tool when it comes to prospecting and building relationship and generating more revenue and starting more conversation or retaining customers by actually, nurturing those conversations between in-person meetings.
Yeah.
Now there is not in-person meetings anymore, but it used to be. And between those in-person meetings, you needed to be front and center and carrying on delivering value to customers online.
Yeah.
Through sharing insights, emails. But, so LinkedIn was a fantastic tool to monitor customers because you could see when they were sharing, when they were commenting, when they were liking other people's content. And then that's information and insights you could actually act on to nurture those relationships. So with the expertise of LinkedIn and the experience that I had in sales, I felt like there is a need for consulting and training around digital sales and social selling in the region.
Yeah.
This is something that has been existing for years in the US, and LinkedIn was obviously a big company when it comes to this methodology and applying to ourselves. And I felt like there are customers of LinkedIn in the region. There are customers using, the sales tool and sales navigator and other things. But I feel like there is a big need and the gap between the way they use the tools and the methodologies they apply and what could be doing, could be doing, or what they could get out of their investment in LinkedIn or just social selling in general.
Exactly.
Because social selling is not related to LinkedIn specifically. It's really about digital broadly, social media and digital.
Yeah.
So that's the idea, and I felt like there was a gap, and I felt like well, there is no one really focusing on that in the region. So I wanted to set up my own business and help those companies who would be, let's say, open to the idea of actually really implementing a social selling strategy to actually be more successful when it comes to sales.
Yeah. And you said that also, like you said, in the social selling has been around for a very long time, particularly, in the US and in the West, but sometimes in other parts of the world and in other countries, there's almost a lag time, you said, in adoption of those, the latest practices and so on. So what are some of the things that when you came here that you found, or maybe still are, that are, now you've been running the business for a year, are most companies still lacking in that adoption, or is everyone slowly now beginning to realize the importance of implementing these kind of strategies?
So there is not really a lot of data around that. Because LinkedIn releases reports every year, state of sales reports. There are some reports going out in the US and in the West, in Europe, and so on. There is nothing really allowing us to compare the adoption of social selling, for example, in UAE or in the Middle East with regards to others.
Okay.
LinkedIn has got an index called Social Selling Index, called SSI. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure they have information when it comes to the average SSI of salespeople in UAE or by country, and they can compare between countries. Yeah. I think also, some global companies like Oracle, SAP, Microsoft, LinkedIn, and so on, they've been adopting social selling for years now. So, and those programs have been run globally. So the offices in Dubai or in the Middle East of Oracle, they've been adopting and executing those strategies when it comes to digital sales and social selling for years. So there is, and salespeople and employees are moving across companies. So it ends up actually leveling up the countries and but yes, of course, there is a small gap, I would say. Sure. But it's taking off, and I hope I will contribute as well.
No, I'm sure you will. I think, like you said, there is a gap here, and I think there's a big need for a lot of companies to start implementing that kind of stuff here. At least from the conversations that I have with my friends who work at various companies, that is one thing that does come up, and you're like, okay, it's interesting that that's not like top of mind for them. Yeah. And one thing that was interesting that you told me is that now there's I can't remember what the numbers were, but the number of decision makers involved in any process have gone up from like 5.4 to 6.8. So is that why social selling right now is so crucial, because it kind of helps you bypass those early decision makers faster, or how does that play into that kind of?
So Forrester has released this report a couple of years ago, and the forecast was to have around 10 decision. So in the B2B decision making process, when it comes to purchasing, they were in their report. They were showing that the purchasing process was actually including more decision makers. Yeah. And they were basically forecasting around 10 by 2020. So, and it's true that companies have a lot more functions involved in decisions and purchasing decisions. So from a B2B standpoint and B2B sales, in the B2B sales industry, salespeople need to bring more, or at least be aware, identify more potential decision makers who might be involved in the decision making process. Yeah. So actually, identifying them earlier on will allow you to build those relationships earlier on. Yeah, exactly. And will actually be able to prevent, or at least initiate those conversations before you find out by surprise that there are people at the table that you didn't even know about. Exactly. Yeah. So you can educate them early on, you can influence them early on, you can be there and support them early on, and that will actually obviously help get the deal, get the deal progress faster.
Yeah.
And usually it also brings the value of the deal up.
Yeah, exactly. And one thing that you were talking about, because I know you guys do social selling, digital marketing, and social recruiting. So you've been going now for about a year. Which of those three areas have you seen is, I guess, the most challenging areas, or the areas that people haven't really adopted so much, and which areas do you see have the biggest potential for like growth and like revenue?
So I used to be a LinkedIn Talent Solutions. So we used to help organizations with regards to recruitment and employer branding.
Yeah.
And I've got to say, LinkedIn, the value for companies adopting LinkedIn Talent Solutions is much greater than other solutions that LinkedIn offers. So the adoption of the LinkedIn as a tool for recruitment is huge. And that's the reason why it's also a business line that's generating most revenue for LinkedIn as a business.
Really?
Globally.
Okay, interesting.
So the LinkedIn corporate solutions, when it comes to recruitment, is the biggest revenue stream when it comes to LinkedIn. The second one is related to marketing, products, advertising, and so on. And you also have the new kid on the block, the sales solution, which is around helping organizations with regards to sales.
Yeah.
So with Sales Navigator and all of that. So in terms of the adoption in the region, if we are talking about the Middle East, there is a much greater penetration when it comes to LinkedIn Talent Solutions.
Okay.
And obviously it depends what you mean by potential, because obviously that means there are more customers that are using LinkedIn and that could be benefiting of optimizing and maximizing the ROI of their investment with LinkedIn when it comes to recruitment and so on. Obviously right now companies don't recruit that much. Hopefully it's going to pick up now. When it comes to sales, the same. It's even more critical for organizations to sell and to generate revenue.
Yeah.
However, a lot of organizations are not yet mature to the point where they have a redefined strategy when it comes to social selling and so on. They might, occasionally leverage LinkedIn as part of other sources for generating leads. And then marketing might be focused on social media marketing as well.
Yeah.
And sales might be using LinkedIn randomly as random act of social selling, but there is not really a structured strategy
for the
organization.
Yeah.
So that's what, in terms of potential, depends, because if you look at the market, yes, there is a greater potential for social recruitment, but the maturity is there already, and the gap for maximizing the ROI is much smaller than, for example, for the social selling, which the potential is huge, because every company in the region is pretty much focused on generating revenue out of the Middle East, and so and the adoption of social selling as a methodology is much smaller.
Much smaller, yeah.
So there is greater potential on that as well.
Okay, so the fact that and that makes perfect sense as to why you focused on like social selling for like your business as like one of the key areas. If the potential for that is much greater. So let's say I know it's probably very industry specific and business specific, but let's say I'm a client, I come to you, I'm like, Guillaume, I would like to build out my social selling strategy. What are the components, or what advice would you give to companies or like people who are looking to have a nice, strong social selling strategy?
So the first thing is understanding where they are coming from.
And what do you mean
you cannot really help them get where they want to be if you don't understand where they are today and where they're coming from and why they get there.
Okay.
They got there. So we do assessments. We understand through surveys and assessments and discovery interviews. We discuss with leaders. Usually we bring to the table marketing, the marketing function, the sales function. Sometimes they have learning and development or sales enablement or sales ops. You also want to bring to the table the executive team, for example, or CEO or managing partner, depending on the size of the organization.
Yeah.
And understanding where they are all coming from, the business objectives, and the situation today in terms of doing a small assessment of the team.
Okay.
Because again, assessing the team will allow the sales leaders sometimes to discover the maturity of their team when it comes to using social media or digital tools or social selling in general.
And when you say maturity, are you talking about how comfortable the team is using those type of tools, or their awareness or understanding of how to implement, that kind of stuff?
So maturity when it comes to the usage, the current usage.
Okay.
Because the usage will give you a big indicator whether they get it, how much they get it, what kind of functionality they use, and which functionality they don't use yet, and that will give you a good understanding of where they are. And so, giving this knowledge and this assessment in terms of visibility to the leadership team, the sales team, the marketing team, and so on, and aligning with regards to where they're coming from, their current situation, and what they want to be, their goals or their revenue goals or their business goals, and are trying to actually build a program to get them there.
Okay. So it starts, first of all, from the story, understanding where they were, how did we get here, and where do you want to go. And I guess one of the key things that you talked about, like you said, is the maturity or the use of their teams or their companies in the social space, and you help consult with them in building out a strategy on how to improve that to get to where they're trying to go. Okay.
And if I may, actually, I designed a small assessment. And my goal is to actually have a small assessment that is publicly available. So actually, every year we get enough data to do an annual report. Okay. So we can do some kind of annual report based on this is the maturity of sales teams by industry, this is the maturity by functional seniority. So like salespeople who are, in individual contributor roles, this is the maturity. Sales leaders, this is the maturity when it comes to social selling. So then we can actually do a report by country or by, for example, within UAE, by function or by industry. So then it's really good for companies to be able to see my company, how do I compare with other companies in my space. And so, this assessment that we are doing, we are doing a detailed one for companies, like a custom one, but I'm about to actually, have an assessment that is publicly available. So then this data will be, used for doing an annual report.
Okay, and I think
that's one of the goals.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea because, like you said, getting insights into, first of all, the overall scene, in the industry here, and like you said, looking at as your company being like, okay, how are they using it, and how successful are they? Is it because of their social strategy? It just gives you so much more insights into that world and the potential and the progress of that world, and maybe where you should be focusing your attention. I think that's a great idea.
And it serves two purposes. One is about individuals. Because as a sales leader, as a sales professional, I can compare myself. I can actually do the assessment and very quickly get a score, and I can actually see where do I compare versus other sales individuals in my space. Exactly. And then the same for sales leaders. So then very quickly you get a feedback, and then all this information can actually be also used for an annual report. So then, you can actually get some insights in the region as well.
So you're giving them very detailed and specific business insights.
At company level as well. So then you have individual level, and then you can actually have a company level kind of annual report as well.
I think that's awesome. I think that's a very good idea. And I think a lot of people will be very interested in finding out, where they stand in whatever industry they're in. One of the questions I was thinking about was, what advice would you give to your younger self after all your years of work and experience? And one thing you said was, gain experience quicker. Now, and that was interesting to me because I don't know how you can, let me ask you about this. Do you believe experience is accomplishment based, or do you think experience is time based? Because you can have experience in a field for a long time but not grow. So do you have a lot of experience, and you can accomplish a lot of things in a short time, so maybe you have different experience. What would you say when you say I could get experience faster? What did you mean by that? Because in 6 years you did a lot. So
one of the things that it's so cliche to quote one of the CEOs and so on, right? But I've got to say at LinkedIn I got exposure to great leaders. The CEO of LinkedIn, Jeff Winner, who's left a couple of months ago, he's still at LinkedIn, but he's not the CEO anymore. I saw an interview of him saying actually how to get experience is by making mistakes. How do you stop making mistakes? By getting experience.
Okay.
So basically there is no other choice. You only gain experience by actually making mistakes, and how to avoid mistakes is by through experience. So it's that simple, and it's so true, and they resonated with me. Obviously it was later, like I wish I knew about it, or at least it was so clear. Like sometimes there are things you feel, and then you actually get it so clear to you, it comes through. Like, so I really feel like what I mean by that is I wished I making mistakes early on and learning from those mistakes is something that allows people to develop much faster.
Okay, I see.
Obviously, repeating the same mistakes is a given, and getting exposure to making those mistakes, trying new things, and so on, will actually gain you a lot more experience much faster. So that's my answer to your question.
Yeah.
And I think there are things that you will figure out and you will get it right, and that's great. And sometimes you will try to improve, and then you will realize that was a mistake, and you will go back to the things that you did right in the first instance. For example, at LinkedIn, in my first year at LinkedIn in France, I was one of the strategy was I was by myself. And I felt there was a lot of agencies that were specializing in HR, communication, and so on, that companies were relying on for buying social media advertising and buying, then LinkedIn was being categorized as a social media platform.
Yeah.
When it comes to HR, they were going through those agencies. And agencies were used to use job boards, like they used to buy job boards, and LinkedIn was not a job board, and we were much more expensive than job boards. So I spent time educating those agencies, for example, a lot of time, and explaining, doing presentations and so on, thinking that they will relay the information to their clients, and they will position LinkedIn in a much more efficient way, and they had already the relationship, rather than me by myself alone going and seeing all those clients.
Yeah.
And it didn't really work out, because I think the position of LinkedIn was so different for them. They still tried to position LinkedIn as another job board.
Okay.
And basically I ended up reversing my strategy and going after, obviously I was also in parallel going after companies and meeting those kind of clients and building those relationships with companies as well. And I ended up kind of like stopping my strategy with partners, and the reputation I built within a year was like when people took over, because obviously we built the team, we opened the office, people were actually going after, going and meeting partners, and the reputation, I was like, Guillaume was always saying no to us. So, and one of the big learning was actually not being afraid of saying no, because at the beginning I was always saying yes, yes, yes. But I ended up like not wasting time, but it was not really the best use of my time, and really like saying no. And, so again, I could have made a mistake. I could have learned faster. I could have not reacted fast enough, and I could have been out of LinkedIn, because like LinkedIn is not good. Guillaume is not good enough. So, I think you can make mistakes, learning from that as soon as possible and avoiding them. It's going to be this is the way you build your experience.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to look at it, is to make the mistakes and get that experience, because it's almost two sides of the same coin. Like that quote that you said, I think it's perfect, says it perfectly. When you're talking about the making mistakes, and like in that example that you just mentioned, is it about being brave enough or willing to take a risk, or to like change something very quickly, or is that what it comes down to? Because you said I could have done that earlier, but I was saying yes for a long time. So if you're maybe more willing to take that risk to say no from the beginning, you might have learned it faster. And is that what you're kind of talking about?
It really depends. I mean, some people will say no right away, and they will get it right away, and some others will keep saying yes. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's just some people are, really will depend.
Yeah.
It will depend on the situation. It will depend. I think it's not necessarily taking risks. So, for example, again, one of the value of LinkedIn is taking intelligent risks. And what I love about it is that every year LinkedIn was focusing on one of the core value. So during the year, you were focusing on that. There were themes, there were projects around that to really, embed that value within all the employees. And like I said, when I joined, it was 500 employees. When I left, it was 10,000. So can you imagine the growth every year and the pressure on the recruitment teams?
Yeah.
In terms of training, onboarding, and so on. So obviously having the right culture and the right values and educating the employees around those to have an alignment across the board was really super, critical.
Yeah.
And so taking intelligent risk was a really good one because I had the entrepreneurship mindset early on. I always dreamed about it. I had this experience in London, and I always wanted to set up my own business at some point. But it's only when there were those projects at LinkedIn that, for example, taking intelligent risk, they gave some guidelines around what it means
to take that risk.
Yeah. So what does it mean? What criteria do you use? How, when it makes sense to make a bet? Is it too risky? Is it too safe? What is the right criteria?
Yeah.
So it was really interesting because it also educated me. There are, clarity and simplicity sometimes. This is amazing to get that exposure.
Yeah.
Just I wish. And when you talked about earlier on in terms of the entrepreneurs who right from school start their own business, and then some others, they get into the corporate world. Again, it's based on the capability of learning from their own mistakes. Sometimes people will get a lot more exposure to that knowledge and that experience from others, rather than learning by themselves by making their own mistakes.
No.
Some people will need to make their own mistakes to learn. Some others will get a lot more value from getting into those companies with incredibly leadership teams, will actually give you simple, clear messages and knowledge and expertise and experiences that you can get from and learn from at a much faster rate than if you were just by yourself with two other people who actually have no experience whatsoever, fresh graduates, and you learn by making those mistakes. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's really important to, everyone has got different experience and has got different goals and different ways of getting there. But I really feel actually, again, it depends, but I really feel having a blend of, some people might start from fresh graduates from school, but they will build mentors. They will build a network of mentors they can rely on and they can learn from. Yeah. Some people won't. Some people will go to a corporate world or McKinsey and they will learn in 2 years as much as someone else who could learn in 10 years.
True, yeah.
So, and then they will start their own business. Yeah. So it really varies.
Yeah, it's very subjective, but I think you like hit the nail on the head about mistakes and experiences. And coming back to that question that we were talking about earlier, I think that path, it just comes down to you as the person. Do you want to learn and make mistakes under someone else's umbrella where there's a system in place for you that you can learn from and you can grow and then take care of something?
And it's safer as well.
Of course, yeah, no liability on yourself, that's for sure. Or do you want to be thrown into the fire and figure it out yourself? You're going to learn both ways, but like you said, I think experience does come down to your ability to not only make mistakes, but make them quickly and learn and grow from them as fast as possible. And that's what gives you the experience for the future. No, I think that's an amazing way to look at it. I never looked at it from that perspective. So thank you. That's very interesting. Guillaume, for my last 2 questions, I wanted to ask you, first of all, you've been going with Extra Mile right now for a year, and you always wanted to be an entrepreneur, right? So now that you've been an entrepreneur for a year with your own business, What is something that you've learned about entrepreneurship that you were not aware of before you started your own business?
I don't know actually. There's I mean, everything I kind of learned or figured out, I kind of knew about it. There's nothing that was kind of like, wow, like
Like a
hit
big
me,
shock.
and yeah, I was
Yeah.
like, oh my god, I had no idea about that. You know, so I set up my own business in London, and obviously through LinkedIn and hypergrowth. And what I'm doing at the moment is not something new. I mean, I've been in that space for years. So I think, nothing really stand out.
Nothing really stands out. Is there anything small that maybe you maybe had an idea about, but now running it yourself, you're like, okay, that's interesting. Maybe it's not specifically like what I've had in my experience.
No, I think you have to try. You have to jump in. You have to adapt quickly.
Yeah.
I think one of the things is that I tend to be not perfectionist, but I tend to really like to get into the details of things.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I think when you set up your business, you need to prioritize, and you need to be satisfied with maybe 80%.
Okay.
Something I read recently that your 80% might be looking at 100% to other people.
Yeah.
Because you know about it, you get into the detail and you build from scratch. So it looks like there's so much you can improve, and that 20% of improvement to reach to that ideal kind of vision that you have might take hours or days, extra, when actually you can just cut it out. Cut it, 80% is fine, and then to other people it would look like perfection. Or great.
Mm-hmm.
So I think just trying to get to that 80% and
Be comfortable with
shipping it, like they say
Yeah.
in development, but and being okay with it, and then just moving on is something that is really important, I think.
Yeah.
And I need to focus on that.
Yeah. So learning to basically, correct me if I'm wrong, learning to be slightly more efficient and just optimizing, what you have to, those
and being happy with 80%.
Exactly,
so when you
yeah.
get that point, you just move on and you get it done, and then you don't waste your time on the perfections.
Exactly. Yeah. And for the last question, what would you like for the future of Extra Mile in the next 5 years? Where do you want it to be?
So, well, it's gonna be like relatively basic, but my vision is to grow the business. So it's a sustainable business. It really had values to other clients. Having clients that are loyal, that are happy, that are referring me to other customers, it actually shows that when you are at that point, that means that you've done a good job.
Yeah.
So just having a really great business with great clients, happy clients, great people, great team, and ideally in Middle East.
Yeah.
And maybe expanding somewhere else. We will see, but it's a very long shot so far.
Yeah.
Just trying to grow is it would be amazing. So
Yeah.
that's the goal, and obviously we will see later.
Yeah, and I think what you said is really is what it's all about. Is yes, growing the business, but growing it with happy customers and truly adding value to their businesses and helping them be successful. And building, like you said, the correct teams, because that's what comes down to the end of the day.
Yeah,
you need people to grow.
This is very difficult, to be honest.
Yeah.
This is and I think I'm really thankful about the LinkedIn experience again, because of the focus they had on people, on the culture. And very early on, when you are 500 employees and you're growing at the rate of LinkedIn at the time, and having the leadership team they had, and nailing the culture very early on, and they kept the culture throughout. And it really makes them unique. And that culture, obviously, at the time, it was very innovative in a way, but when it comes to Silicon Valley, maybe other companies had the same strategies and priorities as well.
Yeah.
But for me, coming from France or in the UK and working in a startup like LinkedIn and having such a mature and thought through culture and values were really amazing.
Yeah.
And obviously being surrounded by so many talented people was also really eye-opening. So you can really see the focus on recruitment, the focus on interviewing, the focus on onboarding, the focus on culture, and you can see that it makes a whole difference. Yeah. So this is something that I hope to build as well, with my own business.
Yeah, and like you said, culture I think is one of the most important things in the success of any business, because and like you said, because a lot of, in my experience, what I've seen is a lot of times as businesses grow, the culture that you started with is lost typically. So the fact that they were able to keep it going from 500 to 10,000, that's pretty special. And I think if you can replicate that with your business, I think you're going to 100% be successful. So
yeah, I don't think it's going to be 10,000, but
you don't need 10,000.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? You don't necessarily need 10,000. And so Guillaume, I want to say thank you so much for your time today and for coming on the show. I've loved our conversation and I really learned a lot from it about, like social strategy and LinkedIn. And I think anyone listening to this right now can take something away from it that can help them either get a job or like start thinking about social selling or LinkedIn. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Khaled.
For my last question that I ask all my guests is, what is the message that you'd like people to take home with them today?
This is So my last bit of advice would be, like everything in life, being persistent and being consistent makes a big difference. So when it comes to, social selling or even LinkedIn, I think LinkedIn is such a valuable platform for everybody.
Yeah.
People looking for jobs, young professionals looking for internships or looking for mentorship. People already in jobs like sales professionals or recruiters or even executives, for networking, for creating their professional brand, for thought leadership, for research information, for looking for their next dream job. It's not really focusing on the instant gratification, but really focusing on long term.
Okay.
And being, setting up goals, planning, and being consistent with it, learning from it, and being persistent, especially on social media or LinkedIn. There are other social media platforms. I think if people could just maybe take 10% or 1% of the time they spend on all the social media platform and invest it in LinkedIn on a consistent basis, they will get so much more value out of social media or for their own sake. That would be fantastic. So really thinking about it from a goal, plan, consistent perspective, and thinking long term, because most of the things that you get from LinkedIn, you need to invest way ahead of time.
Yeah.
And if you're looking for a job and you haven't invested in LinkedIn, it's basically too late. If you need to be a great salesperson but you haven't built a network, it's a shame.
Yeah.
So you really need to think about it, build long term, and build your network, build your online reputation ahead of time, and think about long term. And that's the main. If people kind of get that would be great.
That would be great. No, I think that's great advice. Building your brand and making the most of LinkedIn as a platform. Like you said, I think it's a great example of taking just like 10% of the time we use on like Instagram and like Facebook and just investing it in that. I think for a business perspective or just your personal brand, for people to know who you are in the long term, because it does take that time, will pay off much more in the end. Yeah, 100%. Guillaume, thank you so much for your time today and for coming on the show. I've really loved our conversation, man. To everyone listening at home, guys, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And as always, I hope it helps.
Thank
Peace.
you. Bye.
Thank you very much.